All right, so we're recording August 25th, 2020. I already know what it is. It's the Backstage Brawl. You already know who it is. It is the Golden Child alongside some usual suspects. We got the Future Champ. We got the Diamond Cutter. We got Kid Ty. And we're here today to review SummerSlam, NXT, and Monday Night Raw. Of course, with now having 2 podcasts a week, we're going to have one later on in the week covering, your boys are going to cover SmackDown and NXT and AEW reviews and reactions. But kicking it off today, basically touching on the biggest takeaways of the weekend, because we had back-to-back, spectacular shows, NXT and SummerSlam, to tie into Raw. But kicking it off with NXT, guys, what's our biggest takeaways from that? What's our biggest takeaways?
The most shocking thing of that whole takeover was everybody here couldn't decide on the main event.
Yep.
Nobody could decide on the main event because everybody was just torn. We said Karrion, it was too early for Karrion to get it. Then we said we don't want either guy to look weak. We wanted more of a trilogy match. Obviously, you guys know that's not going to happen now. But I think the biggest takeaway is Karrion Kross winning the title. I didn't see that coming at all. Didn't see that coming.
Whooped his ass. And it was crazy too, because clearly, he had the injury in the match, which still is yet to be, disclosed how severe the injury might have been. I didn't happen to see it when I saw, I caught it on
I think where I can't pinpoint it exactly, but I think it was a side suplex that he did. And he did that side suplex. He popped his left shoulder. I believe it's the left shoulder he popped. But you could, if you go back and watch the match when he did that side slam exploder, he popped his left shoulder when he lifted up Keith Lee. So that's exactly where it happened. And he went for the pin right after.
Yeah, I hope it's not torn. I hope it's probably just a dislocated shoulder. He'll be out for
I hope so too. I hope it's just, dislocated. He's out for a few months. Nothing too serious.
Yeah.
But from what they're saying is that it's more severe than what they thought. So let's just, prayers to Karrion Kross. We hope you guys are, hope you come back and defend the title. Most of the NXT universe are big advocates of him. So, we want to see a nice lengthy title reign.
Yeah. It's weird to see of all the snugness and the ass whooping that they basically delivered to each other, he got it on that move potentially. It's crazy. But that was I heard a lot of, people praising the match, because of the, testicular fortitude that he took. And I heard a lot of people basically saying, hey, it didn't necessarily live up to expectation, but regardless, we got a new champ. Keith Lee, we'll discuss later, he lost the title and he's moving on up. But another takeaway, guys, we had Damian Priest catching the North American champion. He was our unanimous pick. Homeboy won the chip, he went off, and then he had an interview. It was funny too, because it ties into his character and whatnot, but he had an interview. He throws some shit inside of a car, and then they basically ask him what he gonna do. He's gonna party, and there's a conveniently well-placed jacuzzi right next to the dude. Jumps in a tire, soaking wet in some sweat, with 2 girls by his side. It just looked badass. Guys, what did you think of Damian Priest's crowning achievement?
It's about damn time. Damian Priest has been a very proponent on NXT for quite some time since he debuted. The hometown kid, if you will, from the pride of New York. It's great to see him, just showcase his skills, because we all know when he was punishing Martinez outside, he was definitely one of the most hard-hitting and most athletic, gifted characters that was inside the ring, elsewhere. And when he came to WWE, NXT, he had to make a splash somehow. He faced all the best that had to offer with Finn Balor, of course, Gargano now, and Keith Lee and Dijakovic. He had great matches upon his arrival, but never quite was able to get that character necessarily over. But I think now people are starting to catch on to who the Archer of Infamy is. And I think this was a big win for him. I'm glad they had the right call in giving it to him in terms of the title. And I'd like to see, what happens, after the big win at TakeOver, I was very happy to see him win it. It was about damn time.
with the amount of people who, because like if you watch the match back, every single person had a shot. You saw at one point you thought Velveteen Dream was gonna be a multi-time North American champ. One point you see Cameron Grimes. One point you see Johnny Gargano with his Miss Johnny wrestling helping him out. And of course, looking at these different reviews, shout out to a Wrestle Talk or to a What Culture, whatever the case may be. They're mentioning the fact that this ladder match might have rivaled the initial North American Championship title match. So, are we buying on that, or what do we think about that whole vibe of them basically, either matching up to the initial North American Championship ladder match or actually eclipsing?
Before I hand it up to Ty, I'd like to say that it's close because the additional match had a payoff by making a star out of Adam Cole. And sorry. But yeah, it's close. I would say it's close because both matches had tremendous payoff, especially for someone like Damian Priest. But to establish a star in a faction like the Undisputed Era, it was big when Adam Cole was the inaugural winner of that, and kind of furthered the story whether or not Johnny can win the big one and Ricochet and all these other great stars of NXT at the time. Because once he won, it basically started off other stories for the other characters as they went along NXT at the time. And even now, with this match, one person said that Bronson Reed had a callback to Bam Bam Bigelow. Velveteen Dream even had a callback incense with the little thing on his head to Scott Steiner. There was so many callbacks. The winner himself, Damian Priest, even had a callback to the mix of Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels by the attire that he wore and how he came out in the ring. There was so many things, and Johnny, he always finds ways to cosplay during takeovers. So these men each found ways to incorporate different elements of character and to bring it into wrestling terms and just basically showcase not just their characters, but their skill set in the ring, which was great. And those two matches from 2017 and now, they're both held in high regard, but they're close. But I still hold the first one because of Adam Cole's payoff.
So you touched on Johnny Gargano, before we head on, because I do want to touch on a couple other matches on the card. I looked at him and of course, there was a chance that he might have won. And it seemed like I'm looking at the guy, he's it seems as if he's out of place in NXT. There's clearly he's writing for, and behind the scenes, he's working alongside with, competition. At least in my eyes, you see him with all of these new crop of talent, and I'm looking as a fan, I'm associating Gargano with the NXT of 2016. Everyone has the crop of talent they associate themselves with. I look at Gargano, am I right to think of this way? Seeing a miscasting of a Johnny Gargano, or what to make of this? What do you guys think?
You're not wrong. It almost gives me the vibe of Sami Zayn. When Sami Zayn was in NXT, what's the one thing a lot of the NXT fans wanted? To win the NXT title. When he finally did, they got him in a feud with KO automatically. But Sami Zayn had been paying his dues in NXT for so long. And it was just at a point, it just got to a point where when is he going to win the NXT title? Finally wins it, then he drops it to KO. Then he has a match with Nakamura months down the line. And even when that happened, he still, to me, I saw him a little out of place because the roster started to change. Who came up during that time? You had Joe coming into NXT soon. You had KO there. You had Finn Balor. You had Nakamura, who just debuted. On the women's side, I want to say Sasha and Bayley were still over there, and Charlotte. So the roster was changing, and just like now, the roster is changing. The roster is changing, and Gargano's character doesn't even fit in NXT anymore. His heel persona. It doesn't fit in NXT, at least to me. Now, if completely off of what we're talking about, if he were to be a part of Retribution, which I think he's far from that. But if he were to be a part of Retribution and be up on the main roster, that would give new light to him. I think he would thrive on the main roster as a heel right now. Do I think he would? Does he thrive in NXT as a heel? No. He seems out of place. It's like they put Gargano in these matches only because of the name and who he is. That's it. I don't think they put Gargano there because he necessarily needs to be there.
Yeah. Another guy that, to an extent, had some, like, is he casted right? Is he cast? We had an issue with, how he might have been casted on, was a Finn Balor. Had a terrific match, terrific showing. Used the show opener versus Timothy Thatcher. They went at it. They were basically working that scientific snug style that we knew them both to be able to do. And Thatcher almost got him. But Finn Balor basically, handled his business. What do you guys think of that match?
What about Kid Tide?
Underrated match on the card. No, go ahead. No, I was telling Randy, go ahead.
No, I was talking about what does Ty have to say?
Let's get Kid Dynamite. Kid Dynamite.
Go ahead, man.
I'm trying to avoid getting my house robbed. I keep seeing feet near my door, but what do you call it? I think my biggest takeaway in terms of is Finn Balor miscast in NXT. I think that kind of lies in, similar to Gargano, where I do think Gargano's miscast. I think it's just a matter of NXT's become a refuge for certain talents who don't want to deal with the problems that the main roster has given people. It's actually kind of interesting when you think about Finn Balor and Gargano because they're two sides of the coin where Finn was there. Finn was meant to thrive on the main roster. An injury derailed him, and then the company didn't want to use him anymore. And for all intents and purposes, I think part of the reason why he was going to be used in the first place was because Roman had that suspension in 2016, which led to the whole I got awarded the U.S. title as of punishment. I still don't get what that was. But besides the point, Finn Balor was going to be a player for Raw for a while, and he ended up being gone for a while. He comes back, and he's been all over the place in the main roster. Him coming to NXT was sort of like a saving grace. Like with the way that a lot of talents have been leaving the company, I could have easily seen Finn Balor been one of those people. I could have easily seen Finn Balor be one of those people and go back to New Japan or go to another promotion to possibly do something else. And him in NXT, he it seemed as though he was going to become the champion, or that he was one of the main people that was going to become the champion. And then that, avenue, they kind of detoured and went down a different lane with it. And now he's fighting Walter. He's Walter's biggest threat now, right? Luckily for him, he had a detour, but he was miscast for a while now because he's just been kind of on his Bret Hart, where he's helping elevate people around him. But he never had a destination. Gargano, there were rumors a couple months, it feels like a year ago now, the way the year's gone, right? Gargano and Ciampa didn't want to leave, and rightfully so. We saw we'll get to it later, but we saw what we initially saw from Keith Lee on Raw when he showed up. I still don't agree with that call-up either. But imagine what would have happened to Ciampa and Gargano, especially considering they're smaller guys, right? Their value is at its highest in NXT, and it's only a matter of time when they don't have a destination or a goal or a purpose for being there other than to not suffer. You can have them work other people on the roster, get other people over, but the fact that there's no gaps in between their appearances, they're consistently there. It's we don't hate the fact that you're consistently there, but the more we see you and the more we're overexposed to you, it definitely makes us feel like you need to go somewhere else in order to rejuvenate your career. And yeah, I think both of them have suffered from that. I think in the case of Finn Balor, it's just a matter of, did he really have a destination to go to in the first place? And with Gargano, it was pretty clear he didn't. They were just trying to find things for him to do so that he could stay there. So that's kind of how I feel about it.
I feel like with the Finn thing, it's not when Finn came up to NXT. I'm gonna say went to NXT because NXT is no demotion by any way, shape, or form. When he went to NXT, went to basically revitalize his career. You know, he turned heel. They kind of teased the Bullet Club thing a little bit, but then I guess they just got rid of those plans altogether, and they just made him, you know, basically Prince Devitt of their version. And then they went and did the whole Walter angle, and then of course, you know, COVID hit. So that's the only reason why. It's really not Finn's fault.
Never
But
said it was.
no. I'm not saying that at all. You know, it's we all know it's not Finn's fault. We all know to a certain extent it's not really Johnny's fault, to be honest with you. It's just the roster changes. This is what happens. The roster changes, new talent comes in, new talent has and their skill set are more balanced. They're, you know, sometimes we've seen it before in wrestling, we've seen it. Two different styles usually don't collide well together.
Yeah.
You know, actually, I do have a point I wanted to say, because you brought up like roster changes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Sami Zayn case, I'm gonna make it really quick, but I can't say I agree, only because I agree to the extent because NXT for the past couple of years in their grand championship division, their major title division, the NXT title, right? That title has flip-flopped a lot. And a lot of times it's flip-flopped. It's gone to people who were hot at the time, people who they saw a lot of money in at that moment. And there wasn't any real long-term planning with a lot of people. Sami Zayn is a perfect example of that, where he was the hottest babyface in the company outside of, say, Daniel Bryan. And Sami Zayn immediately won the championship, and they sacrificed that for the sake of KO when they could have built to that in the long term, which would have given Sami Zayn more of a lifeline. NXT would have given him more life to his run, because he didn't even really get to have a run with the title. It was your win, which was the at the time, and I still say it holds up as one of the most emotional wins in NXT history, was a means to Kevin Owens, which we saw didn't have a real payoff. Because even though he beat John Cena clean, and we all love that, we went on to lose to Cena twice clean. And then his career went in a whole spiral of, what am I doing in the mid-card? Actually, what am I doing in the mid-card? So I think the same thing can be said with Johnny Gargano. They spent a lot of his miles with the Ciampa angle. In the case of Finn Balor, I don't think they really, started the engine on what he was doing. Like, they started off okay with the Gargano thing, but after a certain point, I don't think they knew what they wanted to do with the World Championship. So they had Balor have this avenue to go to Walter in the meantime, as sort of like a substitution, compensation for it. That's just kind of how I see it, though.
Yeah. It's definitely like a slippery slope as it pertains to like the NXT call-ups and people who actually remain in NXT. I want to shift gears to the next night, SummerSlam. SummerSlam, obviously a lot of things, went on. You had Drew versus Randy. Of course, you had, Asuka basically facing the, Golden Role Models. Guys, what was your biggest takeaway from Sunday night's, essentially Sunday night's main event?
I'm gonna let Ty go first. Go ahead, Ty.
Oh, I forgot to say my biggest takeaway from TakeOver. NXT UK is coming back. NXT UK is coming back after.
Thank you, Jesus.
Lord knows that NXT is going to be popping off in the fall. Like, there's going to be a lot of interesting things they can do.
Thank you, wrestling gods.
Between the two brands, between the two NXT brands. But going back to SummerSlam, I think that SummerSlam was an overall good show. I do think there are some things that I kind of didn't like. From the first and foremost, I don't like the fact that after all the attention the Hurt Business has gotten, they were bumped to the pre-show. That kind of made me sad, and now they're going to be on the main card of Payback, which is kind of weird. But I feel bad that they didn't just build to, Apollo and Bobby for SummerSlam. I feel like that would have made more sense, because everybody knows Payback is more so it's not even really a B pay-per-view in this context. It kind of feels more like SummerSlam Extra. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a bigger episode of Raw to follow up from the show. And I felt bad for the Hurt Business, because the Hurt Business had been putting in work. People across social media have been saying MVP is one of the MVPs of the, COVID era. Randy especially. So it didn't feel right for them to be on the pre-show. So that was a negative for me. I didn't need Asuka 2 belts, but I think I've seen enough of the cheap finishes from Bayley and Sasha to the point where I kind of want to see more variety. It wasn't a bad way to end it, but it's happened a couple times. But I'm very happy that Asuka got her win in the end over Sasha. We kind of predicted that. We had some wild predictions for this show, in terms of what they could have done to really emphasize the tagline of "You didn't see it coming." But
At least we stuck to it, though. We definitely stuck to it.
And I'm proud that we did.
The stipulations that they gave us, they switched up on us last minute.
Yeah, one being Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville for understandable reasons. It's about time Sonya Deville takes some time to heal from her recent situation. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. I know some people kind of said that the match was good. I watched the match in real time. No, I didn't enjoy this match much at all. Like, but outside of the obvious, like Mandy Rose, botching, trying to lift the table, and that I understand from my own job how hard it is to lift the table from a certain angle, regardless of his weight. But Mandy it felt too robotic. I think the best part of the matchup for me was honestly the end when Mandy went on some New Japan level type finish where she hit 3 bicycle knees. Don't even need Kenny Omega to be associated. Just like 3 finishers into a 4th finisher, went to a 5th finisher. That was some like old school like Kings Road type mess. I don't even know where that came from, but it was a good ending to the match. I think the match was kind of rough to watch at times. No offense to the performers involved. It's just that wasn't their night, in my opinion. The WWE Championship match was good. Sasha and Asuka was good. I think it felt like there was some competition between the two, and I like the respective endings. I like the fact that Drew outsmarted Randy Orton and he was able to block every RKO.
You were right. You actually, if you look back on the predictions and if you kept track, you were absolutely right with you were spot on with the whole outsmarting. So
I said it, man. Drew needed a clean win. He beat Randy clean, but it's the type of clean win with like the whole caveat that like you won clean, but you didn't beat me definitively. Therefore, I can determine this win as null and void, right? Like you didn't really beat me, you got lucky. So it would have bled into Payback perfectly, but now Drew's in the hospital. It's SummerSlam. I think as a show itself was solid in terms of continuity, getting the stories out, this and that. I think some things could have been switched around. And I feel bad that Raw kind of let down some of the stories for me, because when I saw that graphic that Keith Lee was showing up,
absolutely,
I had a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. I was like, y'all are rushing this because you don't got no depth on the roster, and you knew you had no depth on the roster, and now this nigga's in a dress.
Big E.
And there's nothing wrong with a dress, but that's not Keith Lee.
Big E, we need to tag you in, brother, because when we saw this.
Okay, well, I'm gonna.
Yeah,
we're not.
Oh, okay. All right.
Not yet.
Set the tables. You got to set the table.
Right. We're setting the table right now. SummerSlam, though. I gotta agree with Tyler on the whole Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville thing. A lot of people, even Bleacher Report, gave it an A. I don't know what they were watching. It was probably like a C at the most.
They watched the highlights.
It was probably a C at the most. But my biggest takeaway from SummerSlam was the golden role models. You saw the cracks like we predicted. If you watched it, first off, Bayley had a very strong showing. Bayley had a strong showing.
Been having a killer month.
I think that was the match of the night, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They had a very good match. A very, very good match. My hat went off to them. You knew there was going to be shenanigans after the match to soften Asuka up for Sasha. Asuka and Sasha was a good match too. It wasn't as good as the Raw match they had, but it was good. I didn't like, in the championship match, I didn't like the fact that it was on a backslide. I didn't like that.
Ooh.
I didn't like that. I liked the fact that there was no finishers. That was different.
Yeah.
There was no max out on the finishers. That's cool. But the fact that it ended on a backslide, like, I know me and Randy was talking about it, like, I get it. It protects both guys, but it's just like,
So let's talk about it. Let's
Yeah,
talk.
let's
Because
talk
it
about
is
that,
very
Matt.
it is very contested.
Let's talk about that.
A good again. You can go to What Culture, you can go to Cultaholic, you can go to Solid Monster, wherever you get your wrestling recaps from. Wide variety of different reactions, essentially. So,
Yeah.
like, you're down on the backslide, Kid Ty, People's Champ. What do you guys think?
Go for it.
Orton winning.
The finish, backslide.
on the finish.
Here's what I have to say about the finish. For anything. I was okay with it. Like, at first, when I saw it happen, I was like, really? But then again, I had to kind of sit back and think about it because, like, as wrestling fans, we bitch over everything. And unfortunately, we nitpick everything. Let's just call it a spade. And it's funny because before that event, like before the whole SummerSlam, I was watching the Jobber Tears podcast, and there was like about how certain things about booking, and like we literally bitch about everything. Like, even the most minute things we shouldn't really bitch about. As for that ending, after like I came to my senses, I was like, it wasn't bad because, for one, no one had to hit their finishers in the match, like me and Big U talked about in the group chat that night. No one had to, like, there was no Claymore, there was no RKO. Both men were both protected. Like Drew said, like Drew said on Monday, he beat him with a wrestling move. It's a wrestling match for the WWE Championship, the biggest
It's a
title
call back to the Edge thing.
of the company. So if we're talking about a wrestling match, McIntyre beat Randy Orton with a wrestling move. No matter how simple it was a wrestling technique that was used to win a match. And I think at times as fans, we lose sight of, it has to finish like this, it has to be like this, it has to be like this. And sometimes we forget it's a wrestling show at times. Sure, WWE prides themselves on entertainment and moments. But every now and then, it's good to not see the finish you expect coming, hint, hint, in terms of having Drew win by an alternative way. It is a wrestling match. Sometimes, you're used to this. You're so used to the spectacle of that finish that you're expecting. And then this one time you get something that's completely different. And it's like, well, I don't like it. Well, after people come to their senses and kind of like, get themselves out their feelings for a little bit, you have to realize, okay, yes, the E in WWE stands for entertainment, but at the same time, the second W does represent wrestling. And it's a championship match, and these are two of the best going at it. And they're mirror images of each other in a sense, so it worked for that dynamic, which was why the match ended the way it did. So I'm not really mad.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Ty, what you thinking, man?
I agree with Randy, and I agree with Randy because I feel like professional wrestling, yes, everything in life for the most part is subjective. Everybody has their own opinions, right? But I think that professional wrestling at its core, people forget about a lot of the fundamentals. People forget a lot about what professional wrestling actually is and how many different approaches you can have to a match. Now, you can make the case that this match was done a certain way to build towards a rematch down the road. That's an easy case as to why the backslide was done, and that could open up the avenue for them to fight again. You can make the case that they were going for a dynamic where, like everyone mentioned, and I didn't even really notice it myself until it was brought up now, that they didn't hit their finishers. If anything, Orton teased his multiple times. Drew teased his maybe once or twice, and it ended all in a different manner than what you were expecting, which sadly fit the tagline if you didn't see it coming. But it's professional wrestling. You can win off submissions. You can win. The name of the game is your shoulders have to be on the mat. You can win a wrestling match in 3 seconds. That's always been the name of the game. And I understand where people are coming from because in terms of the context, right? Like I said before, the Bayley and Sasha thing, how many times we've seen roll-ups and cheap victories. WWE is notorious for having a lot of victories that feel underwhelming, whether it be from roll-ups from heels, baby faces, cheap interferences, matches being interrupted, causing like a great match like, say, Undertaker and Kurt Angle for the WWE Undisputed Championship in 2003 to end up with Brock Lesnar swinging chairs like a madman. You know, these things do happen. You know, they are very storyline oriented. But the thing is that this finish was appropriate for the moment. It was appropriate for the dynamic. And I think it's just the non-beneficiary of the context at the times. A lot of wrestling fans watch other products. They watch stuff like, especially, you know, when it comes to like Ring of Honor classics, New Japan in recent years, where a lot of wars end in this definitive fashion. Not every wrestling match has to end in a definitive fashion. Not every great match has to end by way of a finisher. I honestly sit here and say, if it fits the scenario and it fits the dynamic, you have every right to do it. I mean, one of the best matches in WrestleMania history was Eddie Guerrero and Kurt Angle. It didn't end off a frog splash. It didn't end off an ankle lock. It didn't end off of an angle slam. It ended off a small package.
You know, and you know what, off of that, because you did mention like it doesn't have to be. I feel like a roll-up, given the storyline, is a definitive finish. Because you mentioned the biggest, like one of the best WrestleMania matches in your claim. Objectively, one of the best, if not the best, SummerSlam match, British Bulldog, Bret Hart, roll up. You know? So there is something to be had about having said definitive finishes. And I think
And what did they do down the road? They had rematches in later years where we got to see more of the dynamics you wanted to see. Do you really want to spend all your gas on one match and that's the only time they fight and that's the only thing you get? Or do you want to see more great matchups over time? You can't exhaust all your options.
And not for that, like there's another notch on top of that as well, because a lot of the things that we've been clamoring for recently is finishes. There's been a lot of false finishes. Would you rather, all right, you want to keep Randy Orton strong, you want to keep Drew McIntyre strong. Fair enough. Who wins, who loses, how do they lose? Do you want a false finish? Then you could run the risk of having those false finishes. Randy Orton has been in a lot of false finishes. The SmackDown Championship title, the male title, whether it's WWE or Universal, has been through a litany of false finishes throughout the course of its tenure. I could look back, the AJ Styles, although we praised Samoa Joe, the AJ Styles Samoa Joe rivalry flooded with false finishes.
AJ's first title win was off a low blow.
So a lot of those things kind of like you have to, find a way to basically strategically get things done. I guess it's like I to an extent I understand it because it was built up in a certain way that you would get a kind of a definitive fashion, and you could see the way where people kind of are baited and switched. But in the same token, they gave you something where down the line to Kid Ty and People's Champs point, they could give you more going on. Big E, I think you had 2 points.
2 points. And this ties in with the whole SummerSlam. This ties in with the last few pay-per-views that they've done.
Yeah.
The tagline, you'll never see it coming. What did I didn't see? I watched over SummerSlam twice, and I'm still trying to figure out. Yeah, I did. I watched it twice, like a nerd. I watched it twice, and I'm still trying to figure out what did I miss. I mean, okay, the biggest thing that everyone's talking about is Roman coming back. Okay, but when you have taglines like that, you'll never see it coming. I mean, again, Tyler even said it. We as a group, I think we made a better SummerSlam prediction than anybody can make.
Oh, hell yeah.
I think we made a better SummerSlam in general.
Oh, yeah.
It was our best show to date.
But in the same token, it's like they be promoting events like Extreme Rules, saying it's the one night of the year it goes extreme. It's like, no, it's not. TLC's in December.
Right.
Like they've been doing this for a long time. And at this point, I think you can't put too much. You could never put all this stock in these. Like if you walk in with lower expectations, you're better off because these taglines and all these promotional tactics are some of the laziest shits you'll see in the world.
It's not even the fact that anyone, I don't think any one of us or anybody in general, unless you're like a little kid, I don't think anybody in general really went into this saying, okay, they're going to do something big. We predicted there might be something big, but we didn't really expect it. It was just like, okay, they're gonna mess up somewhere along the line.
To be fair, E, I think the only reason why they do the taglines right now is because they, one, for advertising money, and two, to kind of just generate revenue. It's basically we may not like it.
I get it.
Yeah, I know. We may not like it. We may bitch about it, but at the end of the day,
I mean, it is a very clickbaity era now.
Yeah.
I get it.
So,
I get it.
if there's one thing that we usually harp on WWE about is never being so like future forward or basically forward in thinking. So for them to kind of be like, all right, what's the one thing that if we need more attention, how do we get it? You know, when we post stuff on Instagram, you want more followers, what we do? Hashtagging. You know, Twitter and those other things. So for certain things, you need something to grab the attention of the audience or whoever you're targeting. So for WWE,
I get the advertisement part of it. Not to cut you off, I get the advertisement part of it. I get it. And don't get me wrong, SummerSlam was not a bad show. I didn't think it was a bad show. It wasn't a great show. It was solid. I have no complaints about it because, for the most part, I think we all can agree it furthered a lot of storylines and it opened up avenues for more storylines.
And that's
kind of what you want out of a pay-per-view.
That's another part of it. There's this misconception in amongst professional wrestling fans that the big four pay-per-views have to be these definitive be-all end-alls to everything. We expect it out of WrestleMania a lot of times, right? WrestleMania needs to be the beginning. I mean, not the beginning, but the end of a conclusive feud, a conclusive story that's been going on for most of the year, this and that. But in the same token, a lot of these pay-per-views can be the beginnings of other things as well. You've had people start their momentums at WrestleMania. You've had people start the momentums at Survivor Series. Rock and Taker as careers are examples of that. But even in terms of immediate storylines, you can have these things start at big four pay-per-views. And if you have this mentality of going in where every pay-per-view can be the beginning of something new, it elevates every pay-per-view by default. You know what I mean? You can enjoy a Backlash the same way you can enjoy a SummerSlam, even if it's not meant to be that way, if you take the time to make every pay-per-view matter. And that's what matters more. It doesn't have to be uber conclusive because it's the big four. If anything, you're contradicting yourself in wanting everything to end like that, because now the big pay-per-views become, predictable or too predictable. Like, not comfortable predictable, but like I see it coming predictable. No pun intended.
And to that
my second negative, and this has to do with the Universal title match, and I think we're all going to say this is a negative. Where the hell was Alexa Bliss? That really got up underneath my skin because, don't get me wrong, we knew that Braun and I don't think anybody noticed this either. Braun and Bray, on the fly, they changed it to a Falls Count Anywhere match.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that. Usually when WWE does things on the fly, it kind of comes back to bite them. But when they did this one on the fly, it really furthered the storyline between them, and I appreciated that for that. But where the hell was Alexa Bliss?
I think she even tweeted about it too.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I didn't know.
She tweeted I think it was a question mark or something. Somebody either tweeted her or she tweeted.
But aside from the question, it is to the panel. This is my perspective now for what I thought about the Universal match. Usually Bray's matches are very slow-paced and methodical. But the way that we saw the match, from my perspective, my view, I thought that Bray in some ways brought some good out of Braun, and Braun brought some good out of Bray before the whole thing with Wade.
Oh, absolutely. The match was better than expected. It was better than expected.
I think people kind of give big men a tough rap in the company because, like, big men can wrestle. Braun Strowman can wrestle. We've seen him prove that with the Big Show, of all people. Like, and Big Show's an underrated talent in the ring himself. He's not just this big giant who stumbles over and beats people. I would agree that Alexa Bliss would have been nice in this match. I will say the Falls Count Anywhere stipulation, while fitting, I don't think they took full advantage of it. I don't feel like I kind of agree with Solomon in a sense in his reviews, but even on my own, I felt like they could have gone even further. Like, we just saw them introduce an ambulance on SmackDown. You know what I mean? Like, especially with it being the main event, it would have been interesting to see a little bit more carnage considering what these two have been through. Because in a sense, the storyline's been building since 2015. So there, or you could source it back to 2015. There's a lot of material. There's a lot of angst, a lot of animosity, a lot of cool elements they've added in recent months to make us care even more. So I think that if anything, if people are upset about something not being conclusive, I think that is the match you should direct more of your attention to and your negativity to than anything.
Disagree. And here's one thing that we've always kind of harping about. We've always whined and moaned about what? Long-term booking. You just said the source of the story's been dating 5 years, right? Bray,
Yes.
Braun, and now, of course, the big dog in that whole feud. It's long-term booking. I'm sorry, my voice is cracking. It's long-term booking. And now the fact that Payback is going to be a triple threat match, these three men, in one way or another, are going to continue a storyline or a match moving forward. I could see Bray and Braun culminating that chapter of their feud at Hell in a Cell, while somehow, some way, Roman is still in the mix with him coming back, because that, it does tie into both. With him leaving, it gave Braun the opportunity to grow as a champion and as a star, especially the last 2 months. And then Bray, they've had a long-standing feud back in 2015 and 2016. And, they've had that feud. And, of course, the Roman essentially is right. He technically did make Braun, in their great matches. And then now it all ties together into long-term booking. So, booking.
I agree with that, but I do have one thing I want to say, because we have to see where this goes, obviously, right?
Yeah.
I'll say, what I'll express is I feel we might be in another Cena, Del Rio, CM Punk situation.
Yeah.
Where there's an already pre-existing storyline that probably should have had a more definitive finish. Now, there's more storyline ties here for reasons for these three to interact, right? But I still think there was the avenue, at least, where Bray and Braun could have had that conclusive fight, right? And it would have just been Bray and Roman. And Braun could have had his last tale in that program of, like, Roman is used as a means. Braun is used as a means to reinforce how dangerous Roman is. Because the reason why I bring CM Punk, John Cena, and Alberto Del Rio into the fray is because they technically, from the build from Money in the Bank all the way to Survivor Series, had a long-term story. That didn't necessarily mean it was managed very well. And there are many times in between Money in the Bank and Survivor Series where you could have said we could have done something different. Like, there was a point where John Cena won the WWE Championship at Capital Punishment for the sake of a buy rate, but it just so happened to work for the long-term story of Del Rio getting it back, or CM Punk winning it at Survivor Series, which, to be honest, I don't even know if they planned it to be that way in the first place. But what I'm saying is, like, in this situation, I still think that the chapter of Braun needing to be involved in this, in the main part of the storyline, I think at this juncture, it didn't have to happen. I think Braun served his purpose for the time being, and he could go off on a tangent and work with Alexa Bliss and continue that storyline avenue. But we have to see what happens, right? We have to see what happens.
We definitely have to see what happens, and we'll probably continue this discussion in regards on the SmackDown preview on Friday. But let's get into the main event of this podcast today. Our boy Keith Lee. Now, of course, we hinted at him in the NXT review. We were talking about him a little bit, basically being broadcasted and promoted on the SummerSlam broadcast. Monday Night Raw, he debuts. Big E, just take it away, man. Just take it away.
All right. So I'm just going to speak for everybody here. Yeah. Sorry that it's getting dark in here. We're getting ready to have a storm.
Rain is pouring down. They're crying because of Keith Lee's debut.
The wrestling gods, they know we're getting ready to talk about this.
They saw it coming. They have no reason to cry.
Tagline. There it is. Here.
Oh, wow. Oh, shit. I'm going to just look at the Thunder. You do your thing.
So, Keith Lee. As we know, Keith Lee dropped the NXT title. As we also know, Karrion Kross suffered an injury during the match, and he is now the NXT champion. And now we don't know the long-term effect of what's going to happen with the title. This is why Keith Lee did not need to come up right now, because being that Kross is injured, who do you place that title on now in NXT? I can't think of one person. The only person I can think of right now is Finn Balor. But other than that,
I'd be down for that.
yeah, I'd be down for it too.
say,
But
yeah.
that's the only person I can.
Roddy.
Hi Thunder, how you doing? How you doing?
That's one of the people I can think of. But anyway,
Roddy.
so Randy comes out and does his promo, talks about, what happened the previous night on SummerSlam, and then Keith Lee comes out. And here's my first problem, which we now know that Keith Lee agreed to the change in music.
That's a spin.
But the music,
I don't believe that.
you can believe it's a spin. I'm 50-50 on it. I have to see what it says. But
75-25 on it.
I didn't like the music change. The music change, it's like you almost tease us a little bit, because it starts off as bask in his glory, and then it switches up. Then it goes for he is limitless, and then boom, switches immediately. And it's not even good. It's not even like, okay, I can get down with this. It's not even good. It's not even remotely close to being good. So that's a petty problem. But now my creative problem. They had a match, third hour in Raw they had a match? It was Randy and Keith Lee. For the most part, Keith Lee and Randy Orton did what they were supposed to do. Randy, as a veteran, made the rookie look good. The quote-unquote rookie. Made him look good. Keith Lee is supposed to be a megastar. And if you're going to promote somebody as a megastar, you're going to put them up against your best veteran. Your best veteran right now is Randy Orton. Your future megastar is going to be Keith Lee. So, of course, you're going to put them together and see what they do. And for the most part, we got a preview of what's going to happen at Payback. And they put on a pretty good match for what was going on. Randy sold for him. Keith Lee sold for him for the most part. So it was pretty good. My problem with the match, Drew didn't have to get involved to make it a disqualification match. That was the one problem I had. I felt like you could have had not really a clean finish. I felt like that could have been a situation where you could have done a wrestling move yet again, and somebody take the loss, and then Drew come out and attack Randy.
You could have had Randy just walk out on the match entirely.
Or that too. That would have been fine as well.
That's classic Orton. And then, he's like, I don't want
this. Because he walked out. Because he even walked out when he proposed the match to him. He walked out and he was like, maybe later. He just rolls out the ring.
That's a classic Raw finish, to be honest.
I mean, if anything, he could have probably done something like he could have walked out. Keith Lee could have celebrated in the ring. Randy Orton RKO him, sneak the fuck out and just did. Awesome.
Right. Because let's be honest, they already planned the fact of the matter that they were going to have Keith Lee and Randy Orton at Payback. They already planned this. They booked this already. So how do you, the booker and the creative person, sit here and say, how do we get the fan invested in this match that we have to basically build up? Because it's happening this Sunday. So we have to build this up in a week. How do we do this? That's how you do it. In my opinion, that's how you do it. You have Randy duck the new guy. Duck him. Yo, I don't want to fight you. I'm gonna roll out the ring. I'm gonna take the count out. Count to 10, ref. Go ahead. Do it. Randy could have did that. Randy could have been like, you know what, ref? Count to 10. You know what?
You're never gonna beat me. He never poses, and then Drew flies out of nowhere, Claymores him in the. Do they still? They don't have plexiglass. Drew, Claymores him. He falls off the stage or something. Something like that. I don't know. I think like the Keith Lee situation sucks in a lot of ways because and that feels underwhelming.
Oh, it is. It was, and it was a messy. It was a messy debut. It wasn't a bad debut, but it wasn't a good debut. Not trying to take a Roman thing. It wasn't a good debut. It wasn't a bad debut, but it was just one of those. This is rushed, and it was. It was rushed. It was a rushed debut. And then the next thing that I have a problem with was his ring attire. Now, again, petty reason to be upset, but
No, it's valid.
Lee,
Like,
Keith
bro,
Lee just he's for the most time that I've seen him in NXT. For the most time that I've seen him, he has always been, 3/4 leg trunks, shirtless, ready to go. That's him. That's Keith Lee. He'll come out in the sleeveless hoodie, but he'll take it off. He's shirtless. He's ready to go. Keith Lee, yeah, he's not fat. He's
Husky.
not like
He's husky.
husky. He has a lot of muscle, but of course he's on the big side. But I know Vince has a thing about guys who are a little overweight. I get it. But to cover him up, I feel like you're limiting him. And then not only that, we're in this era in the world of equality. And when you look at things like that, it's like, oh, well, why are you covering up the big guy? But then this guy here is like, he's shirtless because he has chiseled abs and all this kind of stuff. That's not fair. The big guy can take his shirt off if he wants to. I mean, Kevin Owens as long as I've seen Kevin Owens, going back to Ring of Honor, he's always wrestled in a sleeveless shirt. So I can't use Kevin Owens as an example.
I mean,
even though Owens has lost weight.
It's funny. In a way, you could also see it with the people that he had, like he hasn't like had high favors with, and people that he has. I mean, we were talking about Roman Reigns returning, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna discuss it on Friday with me and Gene. But came back, everyone talking about how chiseled he was. Roman, as a regular person, before pre-2020, regular body build for a Samoan, right? But based off of his, aesthetic, I'm pretty sure that was perhaps a reason why, like, he could, because everyone's talking about maybe he needs to take out the, the vest and all that stuff from the Shield thing. Potentially, that could have been another avenue too. Same thing with Dean Ambrose, where it was just a slender body. There was nothing to it. He was just a taller version of Jeff Hardy, essentially, like that.
So I mean, I get the whole ring attire thing because that comes down to Vince as well. So I get it, but then I don't get it because it's like, let him be him. This is the reason why he was popular in NXT.
That phrase, not to cut you off, but that phrase is the entire reason why I understood why when I believe Randy was in charge of the social media at the time for Raw, I think he said it, I know Grant Akuma said it, a whole bunch of people said it. How did you kill Keith Lee's mystique off rip? Because look,
killed in a few hours.
Regardless of how you feel about his body type, he's wrestled on main roster and pay-per-view TV for WWE with that body type and did just fine. He stacked up against Brock Lesnar and looked like a formidable opponent to Brock Lesnar despite all his realistic credentials in combat sports. He stacked up against Roman Reigns and looked like a credible contender, and they built him as such. They sacrificed a lot of bodies to make him look like that against Roman in those closing moments. And it makes me sad to see this because, like, look, I don't mind a theme song change, right? Like, that's one of the points you brought up. The theme song change wasn't a problem. You just had to give us something just as unique, if not better, than the original song. Like, if you barter with somebody and you're trading a product that's very near and dear to you and they give you something even better than that, you're not going to feel the loss as much because you got something good out of the deal. But if they haggle lower than you and give you something less valuable, you're going to feel like you got chipped out of everything. And that's what a lot of fans felt like because they gave us the Rock version of Bask in His Glory. They gave us, and it wasn't even the good Rock version. They gave us, like, it reminds me of when they got lazy with the Kabuki Warriors and just put their theme songs together and had them fade in and out and in and out.
Even better. It reminded me of Samoa Joe when they tried to do in NXT when they tried his theme song, they switched it up. It was
yeah, his first theme song was trash, and then they gave him a much better theme song, but they messed up his title win the first time with that.
Exactly.
It's one of those things where you have Samoa Joe, and that's an example in itself. Samoa Joe is virtually in the same body type lane as Keith Lee.
Yeah,
and he wrestles just fine. He looks just fine. If anything, that his body type fits how imposing and intimidating he is. And although Keith Lee is smooth as butter, that's a scary dude. I would never want to be in proximity to Mia Yim outside of a friendly proximity off
And-
of that. No, I'm joking, but like he's the type of person, like you get near anyone that Keith Lee loves and you just see his shadow appear behind you, you gonna feel scared.
I
And
mean, rest in peace to my boy Adam Cole, because he definitely got that shadow. But go ahead.
Adam Cole became a shadow. He got pounced into the crowd when they interacted.
I think they lost some plexiglass money just off of that alone.
Like,
But the
But here's the thing, because you did mention something, Biggie. The fact that it's a petty thing or a minor thing, it's not. And reason being is because, like, we've seen it with Neville when he came up and they had the Mighty Mouse gimmick. We seen certain little nuances and things that they like linked to these NXT stars that come up, like even down to the fact that Finn Balor was the Demon, and then they made him the Demon King on the main roster. And they were just doing all of these little nuances, like in wrestling. Even those little minute nuances that you feel are superficial on your behalf, like saying that you have a problem with it, it's big, because just as you think it's minute, Vince McMahon thinks of that as a grand thing. The reason why we're talking about it right now is because someone thought that little thing, that bask in his glory, that his attire was wrong at some point. And then when he came onto the main roster, he needed to fix it, when in actuality he didn't. So I do think...
and as devil's advocate, there have been times where Vince got something, he caught fire on something too.
Exactly.
I remember, the most recent example, the Burn It Down intro to Seth Rollins' theme song. There was also the time when he told Ryback, don't wear trunks, wear a singlet. And it made Ryback look a lot more unique as a big man compared to everyone else who was his body type. So it can work. It's just sometimes, I don't, like we all say it, Vince doesn't notice the lightning in a bottle that he's caught or that someone's caught for him. And sometimes he'll just touch he touches something too much. No, you got it, man. It's just
no.
It happens way too much.
Because this run ain't over. The next thing is I talked about the match. I like the fact that they're doing a payback match with Randy. I know I've seen some people don't really particularly like it. I like it because it shows how much faith that you're putting behind this guy. You called him up for a reason. So you need to put him up against your best heel. And Randy is the best heel in all of WWE right now. Hands down. We've been saying this. But the next thing is I don't think he should be on Raw. And I'm an advocate for Raw. I don't think he should be on Raw. I think he should be on SmackDown. But I think what they're doing with SmackDown, and I see it because Roman is back, they don't want to put so much attention on Keith Lee, and then being that Matt Riddle is over there, and which I don't know what they're doing with him. I really don't care.
They don't want to make SmackDown and Raw look lopsided in terms of star to
right. Which I get. But I feel like, in my opinion, it would make more sense for him to go to SmackDown. That's just me. But I didn't like the fact that this debut was so sloppy, and it felt rushed, and it looked rushed. And you only have a week to really promote Keith Lee to the person who only watches Raw and SmackDown, which nobody should have an excuse now, because NXT has now been on TV for almost a year. Usually you have to have the WWE Network. No wrestling fan should have an excuse and say, well, I don't watch NXT. I don't know what's going on. No, there should be no excuse. And it comes on a separate day from Raw and SmackDown. So, I don't know, what way they were trying to go with it with the debut, but it just looked rushed and sloppy. And I hope that they get it together I'll give them till next Monday. Because there's going to be no changes come Payback this Sunday. There's going to be no changes. Uh-huh. So I'm going to give them until probably, you know what? I'll even give them, not even next week. I'll give them the week after. I'll give them 2 weeks from now, start of September. I'll give them in September to get this right. Because if you're going to promote Keith Lee as a megastar, you have to make him look like a megastar. You have to make him feel like a megastar. And then not only that, you have to promote him as a megastar. And this is things that you guys dropped the ball on within a few hours. And the last thing I'm going to say, I've seen some fans online, especially on my personal Twitter account, saying that Keith Lee is probably the slowest talker on the mic. I'm here to say this. Just because Keith Lee uses vocabulary and just because you don't understand what he's saying does not mean that he is the slowest talker on the mic. I like the fact that he came out there and he went in Randy's face and he said, "You look a little perplexed. Let me introduce myself. I am Keith Lee." Like that's great. That's different.
It's different. Yeah.
Because
That's
you're not listening. You're listening too fast.
People's champ. No. No. I know.
The rant ain't over. It's contagious.
I know. But here's the thing. We got 2 weeks. They got 2 weeks, a 2-week deadline. But I'll say
2 weeks.
Fix it.
Say this much.
They need more than 2 weeks.
I'll say this much. The fans, if they're talking about his vocabulary, they need Jesus. Y'all listen to Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin. You listen to Mankind.
Pull up your iTunes.
Undertaker.
Let's not get it.
No,
But
it's talking about vocabulary. Pull up your playlist.
That being said, we
Dusty. Fuck out here, man.
There's a 2-week deadline. WWE
2-week deadline.
According to Big E, you need to fix it. 2 weeks.
Need more than that.
2 weeks.
Guys, it's been great. We're gonna do this again on Friday. This time with me and Gene. Hopefully, we talk some SmackDown. Hopefully, it's not too long, this whole Roman Reigns thing. But I'm pretty sure, based off of how the fans reacted to it, we're gonna get an interesting show. So myself, Golden Child, People's Champ, Diamond Cutter, Kid Dynamite.